Yesterday, I put up a video about why I burn incense or why I light candles before I write. If you didn't see the video, the reason why I do this is it's simply a habit cue for me. It's a reminder that the moment I take the action to actually light either the incense or the candle, my focus sort of snaps into place, and I am then, just out of a sense of habit and routine, then focusing solely on my writing. It's a way to set a sort of psychological boundary between my writing mentality, my writing focus, and the rest of the world. And upon reflection of that, I've been thinking more about how people can beat procrastination, how they can sort of avoid just spending their whole day and maybe only getting like 10 minutes of writing in, or spending like an hour at the computer, but you spend 45 minutes of that hour just surfing Facebook, and the 15 minutes actually writing. So while yes, lighting incense or doing some sort of habit cue to kind of get you geared up can be very helpful. The thing that helped me the most with avoiding procrastination has been me switching from writing on a laptop to writing on a desktop. In most of these videos, there's a couple times where I'll actually hook up my laptop to my monitor, but for most of these videos, when I write, I'm actually writing on a desktop, not on a laptop. And what I did is when I bought the desktop, I think it was like $200 refurbished. I didn't pay a whole lot for it. It was a pretty cheap computer. I ended up having the internet card taken out. I believe it's called a Wi-Fi card, actually, or I'm not quite certain. But whatever that part of the computer that makes your computer allowed to connect to Wi-Fi and allowed to go on the internet, I had that taken out. So what I have basically is a $200 electric typewriter for or basically the equivalent of that. Now, some people might wonder why I would do that, or they might view it as a waste of money, but the main reason why I did it, and the advantage and why I love it, is I can only write when I put that computer on. My Microsoft Office is one of the few programs I actually have installed on there, and when I log in, that's really the only option. You can't go and check your email on there. You can't check Facebook. You can't start going on Google or something like that. Your only option is to just log in and then jump on the computer and start typing. There's some disadvantages, obviously, with me having to move files, because I have to use like a USB stick instead to move files to my laptop, and then move those files onto the internet if I have to send them somewhere. So it can be a bit inconvenient. But in terms of just productivity, was probably the biggest thing I ever did to beat procrastination, to really just root it out, is get a computer that doesn't have a Wi-Fi card. That way, all you do is just log in every day and just start writing. There's no other option. You haven't given yourself a chance to go and procrastinate. Now, on a much more meta level, the reason why I advocate for something like what I do with having a computer that doesn't give me the chance to procrastinate is I tend to view procrastination in probably the same context that someone might view a really bad addiction. And that is by viewing my procrastination as something that I really can't manage or overcome, and that the only way to handle it is simply to avoid it altogether. Again, this is just for me personally, or there might be some people that can definitely manage their procrastination a lot better. But I find for myself, if I ever have that window, if there's ever the option to go on the computer basically and go surf, or go look at go look at Facebook basically for like an hour, I'm going to do that, right? I'm going to be on social media for, like, you give me an hour basically with internet access, I'm probably going to spend that hour on the internet, right? I'm not going to be spending that hour most likely writing. The temptation is just too great for me. So for myself, I find it's best to simply remove the temptation altogether. This is much more anecdotal. This is much more just what I found works for me. But if you are someone that procrastination just keeps beating you every single time you try to sit down to write, this might be a good idea. Again, kind of an extreme maybe, but I find that that's what works for me. And so if you find yourself in maybe a bit of a similar situation, I would suggest giving that a try, just because it may work. And to be honest, I mean, when I talk about buying, a refurbished, desktop or getting a desktop computer, right? I understand it's going to be a couple $100s, but I mean, that investment to be able to sit down and actually get some work done day after day after day after day over the course of years, I mean, it's such an easy investment, I think, to make. So definitely something to consider. And the other thing too is you don't need anything fancy. That's kind of the nice thing. You can get the most cheap bare bones computer possible, and as long as it has a word processor on it, you're good to go. And so just want to leave off with kind of a final word of advice. Very general if you decide to ever give my suggestion of a try here or not. It's important to know that you are writing in the most difficult time in history to be a writer. We have more distractions and more means of procrastination than any other time in history. And quite frankly, it's only going to get worse. I mean, the further technology seems to go, the less our attention and less, quiet time that we seem to have. It's almost like an inverse relationship, right? As technology increases, our solitude and our time spent alone just thinking goes down. And so in doing something like unplugging from the internet when you write, you're taking back a little bit of power that you might be surrendering to someone else when you write. Again, I'm not one to say that everybody falls into this category. I do think there's people that do have a little bit of, that have a lot stronger willpower than, say, I do. But it's only going to become more challenging for us as writers as time goes on. And so creating an environment where there is no distraction at all is the most surefire means of being able to actually think and actually sit down and do, the Cal Newport style of deep work, right? The sitting down and just focusing on what you are trying to do and putting a lot of quality into it. And so that's simply my suggestion here with this entire thing, and that's simply what I'm advocating for, is that you're going into battle basically unarmed against this great enemy of distraction. And if you are willing to try my idea of using a computer with no internet access, it's just giving you perhaps a layer of armor against that, right? It's not going to be the be-all, end-all, but any layer of armor you can get against such, this massive beast that is procrastination, it's going to advance you just a little bit further. It's going to put you perhaps a little bit ahead of maybe some other writers that, in essence, you are kind of competing against, in a sense. I don't like to think of writing that way, but there are only so many agents and so many publishers and only so many books that can get published every year. And so if you have just that slight advantage over others and being able to just think clearly without being distracted for an hour, 2 hours a day, that's going to put you ahead of some other people, basically, and perhaps push you towards getting published and getting into one of those coveted spots of publication.